Hello and welcome to the Alchemy of the Soul channel. Today, I want to explore the ways that narcissists and psychic vampires steal and exploit our energies without us knowing it, in very subtle and devious ways. One method is that someone does something underhanded to you, like puts creepy bugs around your room or house on purpose, and then sits back and watches you have to handle this issue. Buying the bug traps to put in the kitchen, under the bed, etc. If this is not done so obviously and over time, it can be a distressing situation for you, and you're thinking it's happenstance and coming out of nowhere. Then the narcissist sits back and watches you squirm and get stressed out, even when they're not around, knowing fully well the elevated stress levels you are going through, and just basking in it, withdrawing your energy in a very negative way or form that you are not able to realize or understand. This is the very covert method, and I've experienced it being used on me a couple of times. For another example, you start a temp job, and a coworker doesn't like you for some reason. So you work there maybe 2 weeks, and the supervisor pulls you aside and tells you that the owners want to interview you for a full-time position with their small company. This is a dress casual family-owned medical billing company. So you show up on Monday with a suit on and tie, and proceed to work throughout your day, slowly getting the feeling that this interview with the owners is not going to happen. A feeling of dread and embarrassment builds up to an almost crescendo. The coworker that doesn't like you sits across from you, mocks and questions you for getting all dressed up. At the end of the day, the supervisor was nowhere to be found, and when you finally corner her by the copy machine, she looks at you startled and just walks away in a panic. You go back to your desk and get ready to leave as the antagonistic coworker Kat calls you as you walk away. "Oh, it's going to rain tonight." Pretty bad, but this is a more direct form of this type of psychological attack. There are more involved insidious methods that I have come across throughout my life that involve any number of people and veer their contacts and resources. It can get quite elaborate. Yet, I was not fully confronted with anything other than maybe a snide remark in passing or a type of aloof, unsympathetic cliche or canned remark or reaction from those that unknowingly truly believe I deserve this type of twisted punishment, or secretly get off on my despair, etc. It takes quite a beating to pick up on this type of setup or personality type. And sometimes it is so well hidden behind others that it takes a type of divine intervention or wisdom that is not available to most. The group dynamic being the most effective, since there are various levels of disclosure, truth and true intentions of the head narcissist or narcissists, and most people will not understand the type of malice or covert hostility from others they have known over the years. So being new to a group or gang of people, the covert or overt narcissist is well established and equipped to target a singular individual, like myself, and make my life a living hell unbeknownst to his audience or me. Quite evil and deranged. There is also an experience I have had with a covert narcissist and borderline, who was so well hidden and portrayed somewhat of an immature Pollyanna vapid and trite facade and personality, shifting between cerebral and just plain immature and childish portrayal, that it took me decades to parse why. I was slowly descending into ill health anxiety and mental issues amongst my other issues and other attacks on myself. This type of NPD was very intelligent, smart and psychologically adept just from speaking with them, but they would not give off any indication other than being vehemently, viciously angry and raging when speaking about others. His pride and envy would target me because I had become a type of confidant or sounding board for their own externalized thoughts that they could not validate, and would get calls several times a day with him, repeating the same thing he believed over and over, like he was saying it for the first time. I think he just wanted to hear himself say things out loud and for someone to hear it. A very disturbed and internally unregulated and emotionally dysfunctional individual. This type of person cannot validate their own thoughts and feelings, and especially cannot regulate their disappointment, anger, anxiety, and fear, etc. So they need a constant feedback loop, or yes, man, just to hear themselves, or to be able to validate themselves externally. But it was never enough, and it never worked. So when I start to put up boundaries, his pride and sense of entitlement and inability to regulate his own reality eventually led to him hating and secretly viciously judging me on a spiritual and mental level. Because thought is energy too. I was the only one entrained for years by constant repetition and indoctrination into his psyche, being the terminal point for his rage-fueled anger and judgments. It was all too easy to feel the toxic energy coming from him at any distance, because I had allowed it initially out of sympathy for his partner passing away 3 years earlier. I was barraged with phone calls almost a dozen times a day, telling me that he thought that his partner was still alive, and that it was conspiracy of the 3-letter agencies to make him upset. What? It was only when I was trying to keep up with his demands and had not even set up boundaries that my ailments started. Because this type of twisted, emotionally disturbed individual's modus operandi, because they always have to find something wrong with you because they cannot handle their own emotions or disappointments. Very, very sick person. But he would siphon so much energy via me being tethered to his volatile, rage-filled, unregulated state that even when I was not engaged in contact with him, I could feel it. Then I realized that he had put so much heavy thoughts onto me that it had manifested as physical ailments. So there was nothing I could do for this person other than being a sponge for all his toxic feelings that he lumped onto me to be the recipient of such dysregulated and sick inner landscape. And this was before I even set up boundaries. When I did, things got even worse, because they study you and they know your makeup via cold empathy, and they just pound at your weaknesses all day long. In fact, I suspect that they thought about me more than I thought about myself. I was their meat anchor and whipping boy just so they could function throughout the day. And I, in turn, would not function at all. As empaths, we attract the best and the worst sometimes. Unfortunately, people who are narcissistic or borderline who are like this, and they will just pound on your trauma energetically in the spiritual and energetically in the spiritual and energetic realms, without any sympathy but pure sadism all day long, much like the enemy does on our weaknesses, just for them to self-regulate their own tumultuous inner landscape of despair, grief, lack, insecurities, and disappointments. This allows them to siphon and harness your energy to function throughout the day. While you decline badly, they end up thinking about me and what they are pulling and what they have pulled more than I think about myself. I then become despondent, dysfunctional, and reactive to their spiritual attacks, extremely vile energy, judgments, and intimate knowledge of myself. They will throw anyone under the bus energetically, spiritually, via perverse judgment, hidden plots, and schemes so as not to even feel their own inner hellscape for just 1 second. They will plan any number of schemes or just react adversely, the rug pull, so that someone else processes what they cannot. They live vicariously through others' misery, misfortune, and their induced pain, just to externally process their own internal emotions, frustrations, and disappointments with themselves and their reality. These people cannot self-regulate their own self-criticisms, insecurity, lack, weakness, shame, fear, etc. They literally cannot do it. Lord have mercy. It is a tumultuous existence.